Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, my dad, Mitch McMahon, my aunt, Lori McMahon Summerfield, and Dale Croft from the Lowell Historical Museum.
In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context as to what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time he wrote these.
In this episode, we hear about the D-Day invasion from Dad's perspective, but we also lighten it up with some discussion of Dad's wartime makeover.
Before we get into all that, though, we have a brief little correction, I suppose, from our last week's episode. Dad?
Yeah, foyer is the English pronunciation of foyer. So
Okay.
It's technically correct. What isn't correct is to pronounce it foyer in the first part of the letter and then foyer in the second part of the letter, which I did. So that's
Admitting his own
that's
mistakes.
not allowed.
There you go.
Foyer or foyer, it's all good. It's all good. Just be consistent, right?
Yes.
Oh, my God. So that was a funny one. But if any other listeners have corrections or additions for us as you're listening to the podcast, please comment. Please message us. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or as I always say, in the Isles of Meyer, whatever, so that we can rectify it in a future episode. And we hope you all enjoyed last week's episode with a little deviation from Bruce's story to talk about his cousin Bill's year as a POW and Bruce's relationship with Bill's brother Jack. Annette Lally was here. She did a great job of talking about her family. But this week's episode is the day, D-Day. Before we get into the invasion, we're going to have to read a letter Bruce wrote on June 4th, 1944, in his own words.
June 4, 1944. Dear Mom and Dad, just now I'm listening to my radio and trying to write at the same time. Not conducive to an interesting letter. However, I've been so lax in my writing lately, I've got a guilty conscience. I thought my procrastination days were over, but further evidence that I'm not lies here on my desk, 3 exposed rolls of film that I'm going to get developed tomorrow, without fail. The Major and I took a few of each other, and the first thing tomorrow morning I'll take them down. How is Aunt Lizzie these days? I certainly hope she isn't worrying because there's no need for it. Write and let me know because I want her to understand, though there isn't much more I am permitted to say. Sis's box of candy is open here on the table in front of me, and I'm nibbling away as I write. Speaking of nibbling, my choppers, the finished product, should be here sometime this week. And don't think I'll shave this mustache until you can see it in person. Really, it's not as bad as you might think. And if I didn't trim it, it would be a handlebar in 2 weeks. I almost wrote years. So there. Fine thing you claiming I couldn't grow one that large. Marg wrote that you all wanted me to leave it in England. I'll think it over. Ha ha. By the way, does Marg run you ragged? She sounds by her letters that she'll stay with you forever. I know she's having a swell time. I only hope you are too. Well, good night, Mom and Dad. Your loving and grateful son, Bruce. P.S. My teeth's still a secret?
We actually have those pictures of Bruce and Major Odell that he was procrastinating on getting developed. We've actually shared them already many times on Instagram and our YouTube videos, especially when we did our Major Odell episode a while back. So if that's what you're going to make that connection. But my biggest question here is the mustache. I feel like I only remember Grandpa with a mustache. So this is surprising to me that no one seemed to like it and they wanted him to leave it in England. Did he have a mustache growing up when you were growing up, or am I imagining things like...
No, and it's
He
funny.
grew it later, right?
Yeah, he grew it later.
I was going to say, when I read this, I thought, no, he was clean shaven for a long time.
Oh, and I remember, thought the same thing. I thought, Annie never knew him without a mustache?
No.
And then I was like, oh, that's right. No.
Not really.
He grew it later. He grew it later. Yeah. He didn't have it when I
Okay.
was growing up. Yeah.
Okay.
So funny.
Because it's funny that no one
Once he
likes
didn't
it.
have to worry about Mom and Dad approving.
Yeah, maybe that's it. He was
Grandpa
like,
and
I'm going to grow this mustache back. Because, yeah, I see pictures of him with a mustache. I've only really ever remember them that way, and then I'm like, oh no, maybe I'm imagining things, but
Yeah, I have lots of them without, so there we
that's
go.
so funny.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, now we'll get into our segment where we talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell in June of 1944. And we're going to make this one short because most of what's going on in the world has to do with the invasion around this time. But I did find a few nuggets from the ledger right around the first week of June in 44. Roger had moved to basic training in Texas, so he's still moving around. Jill and Judy made the ledger for selling birdhouses that Byrne made and donating them to the war effort. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
That made the paper. It's like a little blurb or whatever. I thought that
Very
was cute.
cool.
But again, more evidence of Byrne being a crafter, and
Builder,
woodworker or whatever. And the big news, Hattie Scott retired on this week in 1944. So she was closing up her candy shop right around this time. So I wonder, Bruce will be so sad to hear this when he comes back from England, I'm sure. But I also found, because I was just kind of do a search for McMahon's, the Ledger always does these throwback pieces, right? Like 25 years ago in the Ledger, 35 years ago. And I found one that in 1919, Frank was offered $3,000 to be the city engineer of Dowagiac, but turned it down to stay in Lowell. Can you imagine if he'd taken that job? It was just right after Grandpa was born. We'd be doing a podcast about Dowagiac.
And I'm thinking we're the only people in Michigan, we know how to say that word.
Oh,
Lots
I
of
hope
other people.
I thought it was that. Okay, am I right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
you look at
yeah.
it, and I don't think that lots of people would know.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So he's like going to run them. He got offered to run the municipalities over there, and he said, no, I'm going to stay here.
Yeah.
But, $3,000, I'm guessing that's a yearly salary, and I did look it up, and it's like $50,000 or something in today's dollars. So it'd be like, decent money for it maybe. I guess not now, but it's hard to live on that now. But
back then probably would have been great.
Back then. So, can you imagine? We'd be like, Letters Home, Story of Dowagiac. It's be very different.
In the multiverse, maybe somewhere where...
In the multiverse.
Yeah, we're growing up in Dowagiac.
Yeah, Southwest Michigan, right? In the big Kalamazoo area. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. A lot of little stuff going on, but obviously the biggest news is the invasion. So we're going to skip right to our segment where we reveal information we know about Bruce's flight missions. For this information, we have to consult flight records and mission diaries from the historical website of the 306th Bomb Group and all of its squadrons. On Invasion Week, so this week of June 4th, 5th, 6th, Bruce flew 3 missions. The first one was a couple days before the invasion, and it was a tactical target on a city called Aquihen. I think I'm saying that correctly. My French is going to be... Oh, my French teacher will be so mad. The Germans had a broadcast tower there where they could use it to communicate with their aircraft, so they really wanted to bomb that. And Bruce led a group that successfully bombed it. So this is all kind of setting them up so that when the invasion happens, it'll be as successful as possible, right? We're trying to take out... That's why up to this point, all these weeks we've been reading about these missions, they're upping the frequency and bombing more things. They're trying to eliminate Germany's chance to respond when the invasion does happen. So Bruce flew 2 missions on D-Day, on June 6, 1944. There were 3 scheduled, but one didn't really go off. So we're going to read the combat diaries from D-Day, and then we're going to hear from Bruce himself, from his letter. But before we do any of those, Dale, why don't you start telling us the scope of this day? So, what does June 6th look like? How many people were on Omaha Beach? How many planes? What are we talking here?
Well, it's pretty mind-boggling, but before I start in statistical information, I want to paint a picture of what they had to look at Omaha Beach. Omaha Beach was stretched for over 10 kilometers or 6 miles. It was bounded at either end by large rocky cliffs. It had a crescent-shaped beach, had bluffs, cliffs, and draws that made it hard for troops to navigate and find cover. Omaha Beach was heavily fortified, and it was known as the Atlantic Wall that the Germans built. It had 13 strong points heavily defended by the troops, minefields, and an extensive trench system overlooking the beach with high bluffs. Plus, rough seas that day further hampered the landings, especially the amphibious tanks, which a lot of them sunk, didn't make it. The Allied forces responsible for the landings at Omaha Beach were primarily the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions. Omaha Beach was divided into zones, starting with Charlie, Dog Green, Dog White, Dog Red, Easy Green, Easy Red, Fox Green, and Fox Red. So each Each group of soldiers had to go to these certain parts of the beach. The beach was a killing zone, which we all know, with the highest casualties of any of the D-Day beaches. Over 34,000 American soldiers landed on Omaha Beach alone, along with over 23,000 airborne troops that jumped into Normandy from 822 aircraft and gliders. The Allied invasion included 7,000 naval vessels, including 1,200 warships and 4,000 landing craft.
Oh, geez.
Allied bombers flew a total of 1,789 sorties over Omaha Beach, dropping 3,596 tons of bombs. These sorties were part of a larger air campaign that saw 8,722 aircraft dispatched in support of the Normandy landings across the other beaches also. Additionally, the 8th Air Force heavy bombers, which was Bruce, B-17 and B-24s, were specifically targeted at coastal batteries, shore defenses, and transport checkpoints, like we just talked about with the tower. Approximately 2,400 Allied casualties were suffered on Omaha Beach alone. By the end of D-Day, Allied forces had landed approximately 160,000 troops across all 5 Normandy beaches.
Wow.
The total number, this is mind-boggling, the total number of Allied troops who landed in Normandy by the end of June was 850,000 soldiers by the end of June.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Yeah.
Mr. Eisenhower and the staff that
Yeah, quite an
figured
organizational
that
effort.
figured this
Yeah, for
out
sure.
was amazing.
Wow.
And it
Logistics,
worked.
yeah.
Wow. Well, Bruce was on the first mission that day, taking off at 4:40 a.m. on June 6th, and this is from the Combat Diary.
Normandy invasion, Arromanches. The 306th flew 42 aircraft on this first invasion mission, composed of 2 groups of 18 aircraft each, and 1 lead squadron of the composite group 40 of the CBW. Captain J. Bruce McMahon led the low squadron of A Group with Lieutenants Edward Patton, Ivan Oberhelman, John W. Curtis, Charles Trigg, and William Reese. Bombing was PFF over 1010 clouds, and pictures at bombs away show good, close patterns. No flak or enemy aircraft were seen. All aircraft returned. Captain Alfred W. Weld removed his flak helmet for a sufficient period of time to observe 1 burst of flak in the vicinity of Caen and the picket fence effect of smoke bombs dropped along the coastline.
Yeah. 10 out of 10 clouds. That means we were just talking about the most possible clouds.
Yeah.
Very cloudy.
All cloud.
Yeah, and Bruce describes all this in his letter here in a minute, but there was a second mission to Caen that was planned, but only 1 pilot from Bruce's squadron went, and they ended up coming back without bombing anything due to the heavy clouds. And so Bruce actually went on another mission. He went on the 3rd mission that day from his squadron, and we'll read this one too from the Combat Diary.
3. Harcourt. 11 aircraft of the 306 flew on this 3rd mission of the invasion day, plus 1 PFF to form the high group. 306th B CBW Captain James Bruce McMahon led, with Lieutenants Elton Rabe, Charles Trigg, and Ivan Oberhelm filling in the other positions. 22 aircraft plus 2 PFF formed the lead in the low groups of the 306 B CBW. Considerable difficulty was experienced in making rendezvous because of the 1010 cloud cover over England. Clouds persisted until halfway across the English Channel, where visibility was good. At the target, a cloud patch prevented a visual run on the high group MPI. PFF was used. The lead and low bombed visually with good results. No flak or enemy aircraft were seen. P-38s, P-47s, and P-51s and Typhoons were seen covering the landing craft and strafing good targets. Intense activity was noted along the beachheads and the sea approaches. All aircraft returned safely.
Yeah. So this mission, that 3rd one of the day, was where Bruce took photos from his plane overlooking Omaha Beach. So it was about, I think, like 5 or 6 p.m. So it's a little bit past like that initial morning, but still fighting still happening. We'll definitely be sharing those pictures from Bruce on our YouTube video, our Instagram, and on the Lowell Historical Museum website. I guess I never thought about how long. So when he was saying this is 6 hours after his caption is like hours after the invasion or something, and The flight records say they took off, in the late afternoon, but they were doing all these missions all day long, and I never really thought about how long this was taking. And Dale, you even mentioned they were arriving on the beach the rest of the month. So can you give us like a quick timeline of D-Day, of June 6th itself? Like, when did this start? When did it end?
Well, it actually started at 30 minutes past midnight at 0:30 when minesweepers began clearing channels to the beachhead. At 4:15, troops from the assault ways began loading into the landing craft. At 5:30, the amphibious tanks head toward the beach. Many are lost due to the rough seas that I talked about earlier. 5:45, naval shelling of Omaha Beach begins. 6:27 to 6:29, the naval bombardment ends just before the first wave of tanks hit the beach. 6:30, of course, was Omaha Beach. The initial waves of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions land under intense fire and suffer heavy losses. 7 to 7:30, the second wave of troops arrives. At 9:20, a significant naval bombardment of German defenses commences again. 10 o'clock, troops begin to reorganize on the beach, and destroyers provide naval gun support to silence German strongpoints. 10:30, American forces advance inland and overcome key German defenses. 11 o'clock, the first positive report from Omaha Beach indicates progress. 11:30, the first exit from the beach is cleared. So from 6:30 to 11:30, it took them basically 4 hours before they got across the 300-foot depth of the beach. Afternoon and evening at 1300 hours, General Bradley is informed the U.S. troops are breaking through German defenses and the situation is stabilizing. A German strong point is reduced. 13:30, troops continue to move off the beaches. At 16:30, an exit at Colleyville is finally secured. At 1800 hour, an exit at Valley Village is finally opened by engineers. And at 2000, an exit at Les Moulins is declared open. So basically from 30 minutes past midnight to
military
20
time,
hour
I always got to add real quick.
is the first. They finally made exit points at 16:30 where they actually could start moving stuff off the beach.
So that'd be like what? 4:30?
4:30.
4:30 in the afternoon?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's about when
10 hours.
Yeah, Bruce was coming in on his third mission where he's taking pictures of that evening time when they're kind of moving out.
Yeah, they're starting to make their exit points.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, we've waited long enough. Now we got to hear Bruce's take on the day now. We've heard from the flight records and from Dale, but now time to hear from somebody that was actually there. So this letter we're about to read was actually written the day after D-Day on June 7th, but he labels it at the top the day. Like he doesn't date it. He just wrote the day. So we know what it's about. And his parents are going to know what it's about. So in his own words.
Dear Mom and Dad, well, I suppose this letter should be a colossal one because all I've witnessed in the last 36 hours makes even colossal seem a bit inadequate. But as a start, your son was in one of the first outfits to start the ball rolling on the invasion coast. My group hit the target along with some of the first ones in there. As I was leading my group, it meant that I sure had a chance to see it all. Trying to describe it to you leaves me completely baffled. Where should I start? How can I possibly tell the picture I saw? Or how can I explain the feeling of awe that came over me as I looked down from my balcony seat on it all? Well, I can't answer any of these, but I must say something. As we winged out on course, the cloud cover became thinner until we were about 30 miles off the coast of France. It cleared almost entirely, and the visibility was unlimited. So clear was it that with glasses you could see the men clambering onto the beaches like millions of tiny ants. The whole coast was covered with landing barges, placed helter-skelter on the beaches. Offshore, the huge battleships sent barrages of heavy fire onto the beaches and moved it in deeper as the men advanced. From where I sat, you could see a huge puff of smoke, and fire emerged from the battleships anchored parallel to the coast, and in a few seconds see the shell explode on some woods or crossroads. The progress of our troops could be seen by the fire of rocket guns and heavier pieces. I saw one rocket completely cover a wooded area and set it on fire. In your wildest dreams, you've never seen anything like it. I must admit that you have a sort of a funny feeling when you see it all, and yet are so far removed. It's more like seeing a newsreel, and you find yourself saying, this is real, not a fantastic production by Cecil B. DeMille, but actually a reality. To one of the men down there on the beach, it doesn't have the scope that it does for us. To him, it's probably that clump of woods and the machine guns in it, or that town in the distance where the heavy artillery is coming from. Each man has his own mental picture of the invasion, but ours is a composite of them all. Is it any wonder that it leaves me unable to write about it?
Psh,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know. I read this. I'm like, I have no words for this. Can you even imagine that? It's like you've seen the movies, right, of, Saving Private Ryan or the invasion or whatever, and it's like he's seeing it actually happen from the sky. Like he's saying, I can see all of it. Like
All
everybody.
those ships, all those planes,
And-
and even seeing
The tiny little
that
ant.
man.
I remember him talking about if his first sortie. He talked to me about his first sortie and then his second sortie, and how the first sortie, obviously there were things there, but he said he had no idea when he went back the second time. It was just jam packed, because the second time around everybody was engaged at that point, I imagine. So in the fight, I'm like, oh.
That's
No.
wild.
I just remember him talking about that to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, well, before we finish this letter, because the letter's not done, I will say that Frank and Lotta sent this letter to the Ledger when they got it, and it was published on the front page a couple of weeks later after D-Day, and rightfully so. I mean, it's a masterpiece. It's all intact there. It's a couple weeks in June, and it's just like, Lowell man at Normandy, and has this entire letter. So it's pretty awesome. All right, let's finish this letter in his own words.
To a correspondent on his way in with an assault outfit, the sky must seem alive with aircraft. Because I've seen huge air forces almost daily, I take the sky for granted. But even these eyes that are used to seeing thousands of ships attack some target in Germany were opened a bit wider by the ships that were in the air. I've heard the figure was something like 15,000. Can you imagine what the sky must have looked like? Every one of those 15,000 probably made 2 sorties that day. I know I did. The papers have asked, where was the Luftwaffe? I can answer that with ease. There just wasn't room for any more ships, be they Allied or Axis. There was absolutely every kind, type, and description of airplane over there. Just as we entered the English coast on our first trip over, at least 300 fighters passed underneath us, heading back to France. Wave on wave, as far as you could see, a steady stream of C-47s with gliders in tow were headed out to the channel. I didn't get back for my second sortie until quite late last night, so I'm going to get some sleep now. I had to get up and get some breakfast this morning, and now I'm going to go get some more rest. I'll try to write again real soon, and maybe I'll be able to describe it a little better. I'll have to look up some new adjectives. So long for now, and with the prayers that you've been saying for me, add one of those for those heroes who are taking the beaches over there. Your loving son, Bruce.
Oh, my goodness. There just wasn't room in the sky.
For any more.
I can't even. That's what he's saying. There wasn't room in the sky, which is amazing. I think that sounds like. I don't think he needs more
15,000.
adjectives. I think that sounds pretty.
15,000 planes, and
Yeah.
he thought that was an accurate number.
Wow, that's amazing. We use this word sortie a lot. A sortie is a mission.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Is that like a British term for it? Like why? I don't know. Like I wonder why.
That'll be a good. How did
I just thought of that question, right? Like I'm wondering where that came from. Why don't I just call them
how did
missions?
it come out? Why is it called a sortie?
Or
Yeah,
flights.
I'll check into
But,
that.
no.
And I know we talked about this before, and I looked it up to see if it was in the museum. I actually looked whether or not the Smithsonian had it, but now the museum is in New Orleans, the World War II museum, because I wanted to know if that, because remember I told you Dad put the number of sorties on the ceiling
yeah.
on the ceiling, and so I wondered, is that something I'm thinking? How did that? Yeah, and they nothing verified that, but they did say that there was. Yeah, and I distinctly remember him saying every sortie that they made, he made the line.
Did every sortie count as a mission?
Must have been.
Must have been, right? That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to get. We'll find out where that came from. Because, they use it interchangeably, but not as often as mission. But then sometimes you hear it. I don't know. I don't know if Bruce used it that much in his letters, except this one. So, anyway, this is a side note there. But this letter's amazing. I mean, there's nothing I can add to it that'll make it any better. Bruce's time in D-Day. It's particularly special meaning to me because I remember when this whole project started because I remember looking at the scrapbook at your house, Aunt Lori, that you had brought up and looking through it and just being like, he was at D-Day? Like, I never knew this until, 3 years ago? I had no idea until I saw his pictures. And I was like, well, I knew he flew missions.
Yeah.
I knew he did all those things. I didn't realize the timeline, right? I didn't realize he was actually first of all, in England on June 6, 1944, and flying over Omaha Beach. So I was like, what?
It's like when I showed it to Lisa and the people at the museum. I said, he was at D-Day, and I flopped the book down and showed the picture. He took that picture right there with all the ships. They go, oh, my God.
Yeah. And I'm like, so that's what made me want to hear the story more. And then you said you had all these letters. And so that, just seeing the fact and knowing that he was at D-Day is what really inspired this entire project for me, honestly. And I was lucky enough to visit Omaha Beach.
I feel like as your father, I should have clued you in on that before.
Yeah.
before.
Maybe. No, just kidding.
I
already knew. I mean, whatever.
And I visited Omaha Beach when I did my student teaching in England, and I don't think it resonated with me then. It didn't resonate with me then like it does now.
And I wish I would have. I do wish I would have known that as a kid, because then when I actually went there, it would have maybe meant something.
And you're a history,
different too. And
I
mean, obviously, I'm a big history nerd.
Well, the war of him is so unique because he documents the whole thing. He has pictures of them, before, with their briefing and everything, and then so the whole story is right in the war album.
Yes,
it's fantastic
stuff there.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I've been to all these places. Like I've been in a trench, like on the cliffs or whatever. I got in those because they're still there. I don't know. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But I want to go back now that I know even more about it. But speaking of those pictures, he's got tons of pictures of D-Day. We're going to show them all on our various channels here. But I saw just on the anniversary, so we're recording this just after the 81st anniversary of D-Day. So, today's June 12th. So we're just past the anniversary. And the 306 Bomb Group, a museum, they post on Instagram. I'll give them a shout out. They've given us lots of help, actually, on figuring out where these places are. They posted pictures of D-Day, and they had posted the pictures from Grandpa's scrapbook. And I hadn't given it to him.
Oh, my gosh. That was
What?
I hadn't given it to him.
Oh, that's crazy.
And I messaged them immediately, and I was like, who took these? I always assumed Bruce took them. And I immediately thought maybe he didn't. Maybe he just grabbed them from other people or whatever. And they wrote back and said, we don't know who the photographer is. We just have these. And I was like, maybe I've solved it for you then. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So I was like, I've seen these pictures. I'm like scrolling through them. They were all Grandpa's photos from his album.
Oh, wow.
Well,
They had them somehow.
Wow.
Yeah,
And I hadn't sent them. So, and he labeled a lot of them, so he must have known,
Well,
he knew the people in them or whatever. So I don't know. So it's possible that.
Or one of his navigator or somebody that was on the ship with him.
Yeah. So they have them over there in Thoroughly somewhere.
Wow.
Interesting.
And we have them here. So I don't know. So there's another mystery to solve there. Did he take them and they didn't know who took them and now we've solved their mystery? Or did somebody else take them entirely and we've just assumed they were Grandpa's this whole time?
Did they look like they were in the... Oh, they probably wouldn't be in a book, like Dad's scrapbook.
I'll go back and look.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
look.
don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
So maybe he got them.
Very much so.
Anyway, more to come on that one. But we have to end on a lighter note. We can't. I don't like to end totally with war and death, even though that's what this podcast is. We're going to read one last letter today. It references D-Day, references the invasion, but it also gives another update. So, in his own words.
Kind of a strange juxtaposition.
I know, right?
Yeah. June 9th, 1944. Dear Mom and Dad, hope you're not worrying any more than usual these days. Actually, my missions aren't as long nor as dangerous as before the invasion. So don't be worrying because it's something that appears more gruesome. By now you should have received the letter I wrote the first day. But my gosh, that was only 3 days ago. Guess this last week has been a bit mixed up for me. But as I was saying, as soon as you receive my letter, you'll start to get an idea of what a huge thing this invasion really is. Right now, if I were to sit down with you and tell you about my experience in the last 3 days, it would take at least a week of steady talking to cover it. So very much of it is a secret, and I have to watch very carefully what I say. Won't it be fun when I can answer all the 1,000,001 questions you have to ask me? From the reports that we get over the radio, the Allies are doing all right over there. What people back home must realize is that the hard fighting is still ahead. It was impossible for the Jerry to stop a landing with as much coastline involved, but it won't take him long to get his men in position to resist now that they know where we are. Of course, we may still have a few tricks up our sleeves, so the next few weeks should bring some mighty interesting news. I hope I'm going to have to leave this I hope. I'm going to have to leave this for now, but I'll finish it later. Later happens to be 24 hours later, June 10th, 1944. The big show is on the history and is being made, but is all secondary to a bit of my own personal history. I received my teeth today and have had them in since noon. After the first hour of wearing them, I gradually became accustomed to them and haven't had them out yet. But just between us, I don't know how to get the dang things out. I tried a while ago as I sat here in my room, and I'll be darned if I could get the combination. They weren't hurting or anything, but I just thought I'd try to take them out. Well, you can imagine how I felt when I just couldn't, they just wouldn't come out. I got kind of panicky. And the harder I pulled, the more they stuck. Also imagine my chagrin when I found out that with a certain pull or lift in the right spot, it did the trick. Well, anyway, they fit like a million and look the same. Of course, my tongue is peeved at me because I've cut off a little of its head space, but I'm disciplining it now in front of a mirror. As I go along, I'll keep you posted on my success with the new choppers. For now, I guess I better get this in an envelope so that it'll get out tomorrow morning. Good night, my dearest Mom and Dad. Your loving son, Bruce.
I mean, life still goes on, right? Like, I mean, that's another part of this, right? Like, it's all this. He's right. History is being made. Like, this week we've talking about this 81 years later, and he's like, yeah, but I also got my teeth.
I got my teeth, man.
Right? Like,
and my
still,
tongue's a little peeved.
I like
still
that.
trying to figure it out.
Personifications.
Yeah.
I could
Lose the
totally
little
picture
headspace.
trying to get them out just to see if you can, and like being like panicked that they won't come out. You know that feeling where you're like,
Oh,
no,
yes.
I can't.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I can't. He's such a good writer because I felt that. I
Yeah,
absolutely
I did
felt
too.
that.
I did too.
Yeah. So, personal history intersects with invasion history, U.S. history, world history. It's the theme of this podcast for sure. And that's about all for today. There's a lot of letters involving one particular day, but it was a big one. We're going on a bit of an extended break. So we'll be back in about a month, I think, by the time we come back. So time to get caught up and see all our previous episodes. But thank you all for listening to Letters Home. Take this time, get caught up on Bruce's story while we're away on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. The Lowell Historical Museum has digitized versions of Bruce's letters, so you can read them in full, along with primary sources for most of the people, places, and events we've talked about here today, plus more. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. Thank you to Roger McNaughton for our podcast music and to Lowell Radio for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. Stream it at lowellradio.org. See you next time.